Oh, if only we tasted our own essence from birth, knew the transformations to come were all part of the becoming, that we had the imprint all along, our poet writes. If I were to make a list of the imprints that Homo sapiens, humans, since our collective birth 200,000 years ago, imprints that still shape our becoming across culture, geography, identity, experience, ideology. If I could make this list, one would have to be our propensity for stories. Yeah. The telling of them, the receiving of them, the acting out of them, the painting of them, the passing down of them, and the echoes of all stories told before in the stories we tell today. And so it will continue to be. No other creature seems to have this particular imprint. And just so it's clear, when I say story this morning, this is our month's worship theme, by the way. I'm referring to what we know as fictional tales and lore and mythology, but it is told in a variety of ways, through the spoken and written word, through theater and film, music, through art, through religious symbolism and sacred text, so many more mediums. It wasn't until trailblazing psychologist Dr. Carl Jung in the very early 1900s began writing and presenting on the significance of story and myth in the landscape of human experience, the psychological development of the human psyche across time and place, right? That people started to understand or begin waking up to stories' collective, uniting, meaning-making power, transformative power. Jung wrote, "Everybody acts out a myth, but very few people know what their myth is. And you should know what your myth is what he writes." The great Joseph Campbell, who was a devoted student of Jung's, said it this way: "Myth helps you to put your mind in touch with this experience of being alive." Now, I'm fairly devoted to having my finger on the pulse of pop culture, even what seems to be drivel. And this is one of the bright spots of having teenagers. I really do have my finger on the pulse of pop culture that can present as drivel right now. It sure does teach you something about the modern day experience of being alive. I am the kind of person who will watch or read the big blockbuster. I don't poo-poo any of it. I mean, just why? This is the question. Why are millions and millions of people so gripped by, say, Barbie or Game of Thrones or Bridgerton, Marvel movies, Stranger Things, Harry Potter, Star Wars? I could just keep going. A lot of those aren't drivel, but I have a little homework assignment for you. Go online today and Google lining up to see Star Wars movies or lining up to buy the Harry Potter book. Millions of people around the world sleeping on the streets for days in costumes. Why? I believe, contrary to what some of you might think, that humans, they are deeply intelligent beings. And they aren't doing this because they're stupid or simply trying to escape reality. I don't think so. Something deeper and bigger is happening here. Like Jung and Campbell, I believe these are modern day myths telling the story of our lives, gripping the hearts of millions, telling the story of the human experience, personal and collective. And that they remind us about the imprint at the beginning that helps us to know about this becoming that we're all caught up in, no matter who you are or what epoch you are living through. In the case of Star Wars, it's got it all. Shadow and light, within, beyond. Wrestling with principles and power, within and beyond. The breaking down of the old to make way for the new, within and beyond. The masks we wear, the masks we take off. All the stock standard players in a great myth, the sages, the magicians, the heroes, the devils, the lovers. The Bible has all of this in it too. So do the early Stone Age cave drawings and paintings. Different forms, different depictions, different metaphors and symbols, same story. Now, there's something serendipitous to this sermon this morning because I planned to share the following story with you before this past week. So my father and I are meant to be threaded right now because I will be sharing about him. My dad raised me on Charlie Chaplin films. Those silent black and white films of the 1920s and 1930s. And I am not exaggerating when I tell you that we watched like one a week, at least. We owned his most famous 10 to 15 films, which was a really big deal, by the way, in the early 1980s to own VHS tapes. For my younger friends here with us, a VHS tape, I won't explain what that is. I'm not, the thing you watch the movies on. Bought new, it cost anywhere from $30 to $80 1980s dollars, which in today's dollars is about $115 to $300 for one. So we were a middle-class family. I think this helps outline how much these films, it was an investment meant to us. Our favorite was and still is to this day, The Circus. Made in 1928, written, directed, composed by, starred in by Charlie Chaplin. That was the deal in all of his movies. And portraying his famous character, the Tramp. The story is this. A circus is in town, and the general culture of this traveling show is totally oppressive. The ringmaster is an angry, greedy, joyless tyrant of a man. And his daughter, who stars in the show, the other performers, circus workers, even the clowns, are a miserable, beaten down lot. And the show itself, unsurprisingly, is also miserable and lacks any kind of creative spark or joy. Crowds are few, and the few people that do show up seem to just like absorb the misery and become the dismal joylessness of the place, turning quickly into demanding, disgruntled, food-throwing hecklers. And while the story is set in this backdrop, the real story is the story of the tramp. In every Chaplin film, the tramp, hence the name, is dirt poor. He lives on the streets, he's dressed in rags, scrapes and pillages for food and shelter, moves through city and countryscapes looking for work, looking for handouts, looking for companionship and love. But he's pathless and unrooted to society and to its rules or any one person. In fact, every story depicting the tramp begins and ends with him alone. And he is a fool. That's a capital F. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. He is the fool. He is our hero, and he is also the fool. So the fool is what's called an archetype. Some of you know that word. That was a term coined by our psychologist, Carl Jung. And archetypes are to be understood as symbolic images from the past that embody the collective experience of humanity. Dr. Jung began hypothesizing about them in his dream work with patients and ultimately posited that archetypes were like myth motifs in human form, inner human dispositions or propensities ingrained in our collective human makeup. And let me put that in simpler terms. We are each imprinted with a kaleidoscope of human propensities that mirror the attributes of these archetypes. Hence, humans' tendency towards telling, being gripped by, and acting out the same kinds of stories with the same players for hundreds of thousands of years. And that word archetype, it comes from Greek and means prime imprinter. Prime imprinter. It had to do with manuscripts, denoting the original or basic form for later copies. Prime imprinters. They are unconscious, meaning something that's not at the front of our thinking or deciding mind, but they're discernible if we are willing to take a deep and honest look at how they show up in our conscious lives or the stories we tend to be drawn to. I've already mentioned a few archetypes, but here are some more. The tyrant, the hero, the healer, the rebel, the lover, the orphan, the magician, the witch. A lot of people gripped by witch stuff with Wicked this last year. The witch, the fool. These are all examples of archetypes. And some of you might know them from tarot decks, right? In the major arcana, the first deck was drawn in the early 15th century with them on there. And there's such a great place to kind of get a sense of these images. And nowadays they're being illustrated and interpreted in a variety of deeply creative ways that speak to the present moment, the different ways that we can embody them. Carl Jung said that we as human beings are literally pre-programmed to look for archetypes in our lives because they serve as a framework for our understanding of the world, for better or worse. Archetypes literally help us make sense of being alive. And the fool archetype is often seen as that inconsequential trickster or jester or joker. And in actuality, the fool is the great vessel of wisdom, not unlike our advisor in today's story, told by master storyteller Eileen Ryan, right? So often they're banished, just like in the story, but it was a wise king who brought him back. They're often depicted as childlike and impish, or the comic relief that disrupts adults' adult life or power structures or seriousness, right? But you have to be wise and look closer, for they come bearing the wisdom teachings. They are often the unseen, unsung heroes. Forrest from Forrest Gump. Yoda from Star Wars. Bottom from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. Dobby from Harry Potter. Olaf from Disney's Frozen, for those of you who have had that franchise shoved down your throats. All fools. The tramp. The tramp. And so back to our story. The tramp finds himself enmeshed in this bleak and oppressive circus that I was describing. And after running away from the police, who seem to always be chasing him, fools tend to be conscientious objectors, disrupting the status quo. Yeah, fools are cool. He stumbles into the middle of a live performance in the circus tent, and the audience is brought to its feet watching this unsuspecting clown fumble through the ring, and the act ends in uproarious laughter and applause, and this is where the rest of the story unfolds. He's deceptively hired by the ringmaster as a poorly paid prop handler who every day enters the ring to set up an act and every day inadvertently creates comic mayhem, selling out more and more seats. He is the star of the show, but he doesn't even know it. And the ringmaster works to keep it this way. And so despite being a victim in this exploitative system, he still stands separate from it. He is still his childlike, loving, lovable, wonder-filled self. And he, unsurprisingly, this is how all great stories go, right, becomes the great liberator in the story. Just what everyone else needs to wake up to their own possibility. And this is the power of the fool archetype. They are the keys that have the potential to unlock our own creative spirit, our own resilience, our own wisdom, our own childlike wonder and hope, and that disrupts the same old, same old, same old. Well, by the end of this story, the circus leaves town, but everyone is altered. And the tramp stays behind. And he sits down on an old crate, the indent of the circus ring surrounding him, and his shoulders slump because he's alone again. And suddenly a large piece of paper gets kicked up in the wind and blows into his lap, and he opens it and discovers on it a picture of a star, the thing that they jumped through. And he crumples it up, looks into the distance, stands up, pulls his shoulders back, and playfully kicks it with one of his outturned feet, turns his back to us, and walks off into the distance, each step becoming more and more bounding and buoyant, cane twirling onward. And my father and I always melted at this ending. I still do. It's that sadness and memory and loneliness and hope, just all wrapped up there together in the indent of that ring. So sweet. I know why this story has made a home in my heart and in my dad's heart. My dad's story is a tough one. It's painful, not unlike Chaplin's actually, mental health issues in the family, unbelievable losses, being orphaned, displaced, poor. And what a refuge the tramp offered him, the fool. and it offered me. That amid despair and hopelessness, there is always a stunning spark of creative possibility if you only look for it. Buoyancy, humor, beauty, reconciliation, and that nothing is ever truly lost when it comes to the human spirit. No. And this is the great lesson of my life, to look for the fool in the many circuses that we create, that I create, that we live in, that I live in, and to call upon him or her or them in my own body and soul. That's my great lesson in life that I get to work on. I think we all get to work on that. So that I then might be a bearer of their light in some small way and their wisdom, and also to know how to sit alone in the empty circle and feel grief and hope all at the same time, and to keep going. And I certainly have been holding on to that lesson this week, as has my father. This is the power and the potential of story. It always has been. If we are up for taking a closer look. If we do this, it will point us towards the prime imprint within, and it will help us wake up to the bigger something and the bigger story. Oh, it can get so narrow and small. The myth of our lives drawn and threaded to the myth of so many others before and beyond. I call all of this the realm of the spirit. I don't know what else to call it. It's just so much bigger than me. My friends, we heal within when we know what's going on within. And when we access this and can stay with it, we live intensely into this searching. We begin to open to our fellows and to the thing that connects us across place and time and ideology and identity and all the things that can feel so divisive. And we begin to see that there is a story we are all telling and retelling that speaks to a shared human experience. What stories have made a place in your heart? Think about that. What stories have you quite possibly lined up for in Jedi and wizard costumes? Let me tell you, if you've ever done this, please tell us about this. Please. Don't keep that to yourself. That's amazing. And why? Why? Why do these stories grip you? There is an answer in there that makes the asking so worth it. And you are here in this church. You come to church to step in from the shallows. Am I right? That is what spiritual community is for, the depths of the human spirit. The bigger questions about why are we here? What's the big story? My friends, 2025, this year ahead of us, it is not the year for splashing around unconsciously in the shallows. We're all stocked up there. It won't do. A great collective waking up is needed right now. A deep wisdom is needed right now. Meaning and creative imagination is needed right now. Yoda is needed right now, y'all. And the point is, it's in you to make manifest. But you have to come to know about this for yourself. And to also know, get ready, that inside you and me is both the ringleader and the tramp. Yoda and Vader. Yes. Luke and Leia too. Every archetype mirrors something in our own nature. I keep saying this, moral purity be gone. We are all a kaleidoscope of it all, right? The transformative power is in being conscious of what we do with this kaleidoscope, how we act them out in our relationships, how we are triggered by them in others. Oh yeah. And what or who we draw on to heal and change and try for something different with one another. This is spiritual work for a lifetime. And what a blessing we have here. We get to do it together. Joseph Campbell says, "We need not risk the adventure alone. For the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path. Where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence. And where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world." I will take that. And I want to close by bringing our poem Essence back into our ears and heart as a closing. Kai Kagan. I thinned the seeds already sprouting in the bamboo garden. The radish, beet, carrot, and bean, pulled each birth out of the earth and laid it on my tongue, crushed it with my teeth. And did you know these tiny sprouts, these little leaves and baby greens already hold the heavy flavors of their final selves? If only we tasted our own essence from birth, knew the transformations to come were all part of the becoming, that we had the imprint all along. May we not forget this about ourselves or one another in the days ahead, my friends. May we do what we need to do to stay awake to it in ourselves and in one another in the days ahead. May we ask for help when we need it, and let all of this be our guiding light. For oh, do we need all the light we can get in these shadowed days. May it be so, and amen. And let's sing a bit about light.